we start? I mean, it's about time, right? We okay? We gotta need to wait for anybody? No? Okay. All right, well, my name is Ryan Vance. I'm a coach at Parkway Central Girls High School. I've been there for 15 years coaching there. I volunteered 1 year with the boys program, and then since then I've actually been the head coach of the girls program there for this amount of time. This is my email. I'm also working on a book called The Sprinter's Compendium, which should be out in the summer of 2016, so this summer it should be coming out, and it includes 40 coaches from around the world, 5 different continents, and a bunch of Olympic, high school, club, and college level coaches. So some of the things that you're going to see here are things that, you know, either I've developed over time or stolen over time, and this conversation is going to be very, very different than the conversation that I had at the clinic about a month ago. So there'll be a lot more drills and activities and things like that. So when we're looking at things that we need to have to be a quality sprint athlete, you've got a number of things that have to be developed. First and foremost, in the 100-meter dash, you have to have speed development. And that comes from acceleration and that comes from maximum velocity. Those are going to be your 2 most common characteristics of your training. And when you look at the focus of your training from week to week to week to week, this first part right here, speed development, has to be the focus workout of the week. A lot of us as coaches, you know, we want to do the speed endurance, or what they like to call special endurance aspect of the training, but this is what you need to work on the most. And there's specific requirements that are necessary to hit those things that you need to do in training. Number 1, when it comes to acceleration, you've got to actually practice what really acceleration looks like in track and field all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean you need blocks. And we're going to look at some things that you can do today, lots and lots of drills that you can do without blocks that will help you develop those 2 characteristics. And then finally, speed endurance is going to be really, really important. When we're looking at that, that still is going to be here. What's that?
Yes, we're good. Okay. All right, we just had it. I'm going to do the high divide. Ben thought I thought I was doing javelins. He said, no, I don't want to do one of them. And we miscommunicate, so I'm going to do the high divide. We're good. Otherwise, I'd sit here and listen.
No, you're right.
She's got the GoPro, so
all right, we're good.
You know exactly.
So, with the speed endurance, a lot of times people think speed endurance, they think really, really, really long intervals. Speed endurance is actually going to be different for each event that you do. So if you're running the 100 and 200, that speed endurance is going to look a lot different. You know, that could be running 150s, 175s, that could even be running 80s all out. Where if you're running the 200 or the 400, now you're talking about running 250s, 300s, 350s, 450s, because speed endurance needs to be race specific. Okay? So that's going to also be a part of your program, but that's always going to be secondary to this. Lactic tolerance or lactic threshold or tempo running, that's something that's important to training, but more so important to training for the athlete to be able to get through workouts or multiple rounds in a meet, and also to develop a buffering system for their body to create the ability to recover quicker, so workouts aren't as tough, and also those invitationals where we throw a kid in 4 events, they have a prelim and a final, and so that their body can recover from those things. But in terms of race specificity, that's not specific. That's more of a training factor. Then the other 2 things you're going to have to constantly pay attention to, because it changes over time as your athletes improve, is stride frequency and stride length. Now, as a high school coach, the easiest thing to improve quicker is going to be your stride length. Okay? Stride frequency, it's going to take a long time. That's a neurological thing. It can be improved. And the difference between the top best 100-meter runners in the world have a little bit better stride frequency in comparison to stride length, but also they're going to have very, very, very long strides. But for us, for high schoolers, we can improve that a ton. Think if a 100-meter sprinter takes 46 steps in a 100-meter dash, and that's somebody moving really fast, right? And think if you could improve them 2 inches per step. How many feet is that in a race? All of a sudden, you know, that kid who was getting 5th, 6th in that final heat is now 3rd, 2nd, or 1st. I mean, because, you know, the difference between a high-end 100-meter dash person and a person who was also ran is like that. Usain Bolt for a long time was 9 seconds, you know. A second doesn't seem like a long time, but you and I both know that that's an enormous amount of time in the 100. So we're going to try to work on stride length, and there's going to be some activities and things that we can do to improve that we'll see later at the different phases of the race. If you guys have questions at any time, feel free. So, we're going to rely heavily on speed development, initial explosion, acceleration, maximum velocity, and speed endurance. This is Usain Bolt. This is kind of how he explains the 100-meter dash. And other than looking around, it's a really great explanation of what the 100 should be.
Start, good reaction is key because I'm a kind of a poor starter. If I get a good reaction, then I can get myself in the race, even if my first couple steps are not quick. From start to 30 minutes, that's my drive phase. Keep your body forward, keep it down, and let's keep driving, driving, driving. After I start coming on my drive phase, that's when get taller, forward, getting taller, straight, knees up, shoulders down. That's when you start to get to top speed. 50 meters is when I check and just glance left, glance right to make sure where I'm positioned in the race. I may start listening to the crowd, listening to the cheers. 60 meters, that's when I become a beast, really. That's when I start to dominate the race. Majority of the time I can tell from probably 60, 70 meters if I'm going to win the race because the last 40 meters of my race is a stronger part of my race. Last 10, 15 meters of the race, I start checking again. Check to the right, check to the left. Can I stop running? 10 meters, that's when I turn the top one because last 10 meters you're not going to catch me. No matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter how focused you are, no matter how ready you think you are, you're not going to catch me because that last 10 meters is going to take me 3.5 strides to pass the finish line. And this is where the glory begins. It's when you pass the finish line, I do what I want. Celebrate, to the world, do crazy stuff. But that's when the crowd love me because I put my flavor to it. I make them love and enjoy me.
Alright, so obviously we don't want our sprint athletes to be looking around. However, the other things that he discusses in the race makes a lot of sense. First thing we want to do is we want to have a really, really good reaction. Then I'm going to stay down and I'm going to drive. Then when I get to my transition phase, I want to get tall, knees up, shoulders down. Then when I get to the last, and it's really interesting, he says, if you're not getting me by 60 meters, you're not getting me. And the reason why is because we look at the race in the past and very, very, almost, you know how you have this paradox of thought. You think the world is this, and then you realize something magically changes in your life, and you find out, oh my God, the world is completely different. Well, a lot of that has to do with acceleration. Previously, we always thought that sprinters were what, guys? Short, right, stubby, strong, powerful guys. The reason you know where that came from? That's because all the tall, fast, athletic guys are playing basketball already. They're playing football already. So what are the Americans that are still really athletic that are left? The short, stubby guys that can't play that sport. Okay? So that's all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, this is why it happens. No, you're looking at the end result. You have to backtrack. Well, acceleration is the exact same thing. I can't tell you how many times I've had a kid where they're like, oh, I was first on the blocks, I looked amazing, I was beating everybody. Yeah, because you didn't build up any momentum. So acceleration, with all things being equal, you want your sprinter to be the last one out of the drive phase. Now that doesn't mean we're going to fake it. We're going to see some things when we look at the drive phase that's really important to making sure that it's a quality skill. Now, acceleration is a skill. It needs to be practiced all the time. Okay? And skills take hundreds of hours to refine. So if you're not doing it from day one, by the time they finally graduate, by the time they're in the sectional meet, they might have gotten the skill down. But at that point, you missed out on many, many weeks and months of training that you could have got them ready. So the idea is you want to be as close in the race as you possibly can while still driving. So I had 2 different girls that I've coached in high school. I've had many club kids. But in high school, I've had 2 girls be runners-up in the state of Missouri in the largest class in the 100-meter dash. One of the young ladies you guys might remember if you're old enough, her name was Dina Lewis. As a sophomore, she was a state champion. I had her as a senior. She PR'd in all of her races her senior year, okay? But she still wanted to rush out of the blocks. She wasn't a state champion her senior year because there was just another girl that happened to move into the state that was much more talented than her. So Dina would get out, and at 60 meters, it looks like she's going to win every race because she's the second fastest girl in the state of Missouri. Why change anything? Because she's beating everybody until you get to somebody who's equally as talented as you. I had another young lady named Raquel Jacobs. Raquel Jacobs was also second in the state of Missouri many years later, and I had become a much better coach. I realized some of the things I didn't know and realized how much stuff I had no clue about. And so we spent a lot of time working on that drive phase and that acceleration and staying down. She looked like she was always kind of out of the race because she would drive 5 or 10 meters longer than everybody else. But you get to 60, she's even with you. You get to 80, she's beating you by 5 or 6 meters. You get to 100, and she's beating you by 15. It looked like she got slingshot, down the track. And that's what we're trying to do. It's just like in the discus. Why do we spin with the discus? We're building momentum. Why do we drive in the blocks and we stay down? We're building momentum. So, before we do that, though, we got to have proper foot placement. So, we got to figure some of the stuff out. So, here's some basic things that are really easy. What foot goes up front? Okay, what foot goes behind? Usually, your strong hand, okay, will be the thumb that collapses over the hands. So, I'm a left-handed dominant person, okay? Your arms, when you fold your arms, the left hand will fold, or the left arm will fold over that arm, okay? And then you have the athlete stand in front of you, you're behind them, you talk to them, you say something crazy, you start talking about like Twilight or something if you got girls, like what? And then you just push them, and then you see which leg goes first. If all three of those things go left or right, that's the leg that goes back. The leg that stays in front is what we call our power leg or our post leg, okay? That's the leg that goes in front. Now, some people get that confused, but those are 3 simple tests that you can do with your athletes and figure it out really quickly, and you can cut down on the learning time for your athletes, okay? Block placement, I have a picture up here. I always go from the very, very front of the block. Now, they have that little metal thing that sits at the bottom. It's wherever the paddle can move up to is where you measure this from, because block construction is different from time to time. So it's wherever you have that bump and wherever the paddles can go all the way up or all the way back. So obviously, first, you're going to put 1 foot and then 2 feet, and that's where your first paddle is at. The next one, you're going to do 3 shoe lengths, 1, 2, 3. It's their shoe lengths because their feet are never going to change. Okay? At least not unless they grow 6 inches like Coach was talking about, going from 5'2" to 5'8". You probably just watch her grow. You're like, whoa, she's taller at the end of practice than she was at the beginning. And then, here's a little trick. If you have blocks that have wide paddles, they've done research that when we put ourselves, when you ask a basketball player, get in an athletic position, what's the first thing they're going to do with their feet? Spread them out, right? You ask a running back, get into a 2-point stance. They're going to spread their feet out. So why in track and field do we do this? This is how close we put their feet if you collapse them into the blocks. Well, that doesn't make any sense because that's actually not very athletic. So if you can move their feet out just a little bit. Now, we're not going to be here. That's too much. Okay? But you want their feet to be on the widest part of the paddle you possibly can. And the studies have found out that those people who do that, so the Gill, who constructs blocks, they did one where it was really tiny. They did one with 2 blocks where they stood them up so the athletes could put their feet out pretty wide. And then they did one with 3 blocks. And wouldn't you know it, they found out the one with the 2 blocks was actually the one that was repeatedly, no matter how athletic, no matter how fast, no matter how slow, whatever age, those kids were getting to the 30-meter mark faster. So if you could spread their feet out. And one of the ways you can play with this is watch their first 2 steps. If you see an athlete go like this, they want their foot wider. If you see an athlete go in, they want their feet tighter. Now, they don't know that they want that. It's your job as a coach to be in front of them and evaluate that. And this is going to change. So some of the things here, this is basic. Some athletes aren't going to feel real comfortable with those being the rigid standards of foot placement and in terms of distance from the front of the line, and then also width from the inseam of the block. But as we move forward, you can play with that. This is just your starting point. Okay, so have a routine getting into the blocks. That routine should always be the same. I tell my athletes, I want you to be the last person in the blocks without being annoying. I want you to get mentally prepared, okay? And a lot of this revolves around a thing called post-activation pontination. And so what this is like when you see baseball players, professional baseball players, they swing, well, like back in the day, they used to swing 3 or 4 bats at a time. Now they got the donut around the baseball bat. Well, it's the same thing. What they're doing is they're overloading the nervous system with that heavy, heavy bat, so that when they come up to the batter's box, the nervous system is in overdrive. Now, you don't want to be stupid with this and do something where it's incredibly heavy or outrageously heavyweight and then have them go get in the blocks. That would be dumb. But simple things you can do is you can have them do some stand-in-place jumps with a weighted vest, or you can get a medicine ball, a heavy medicine ball, and that's not really all that dangerous, in an infield or on an outfield for kids warming up and stuff like that, especially if you're in the center of the field going long ways. And you do that, 5 minutes before the race, and you usually get that activation, the body's ready. But then when we get to the blocks, we also want to have a routine. You see a lot of athletes, they'll just walk into the blocks. If you look at some of the best professional athletes, why do they do that pre-jump where they jump up, and they explode out? Well, there's some data to prove that that actually makes a difference. So you want to have that as part of your routine. The other thing they found out is when you see like the Eastern European sprinters, they're slapping and pounding their legs, that slapping and pounding, which is like the opposite of a calming massage, because a calming massage is going to slow down the nervous system, dampen the nervous system, relax you. But slapping wakes you up. Okay? And Mythbusters actually did something with that, where they slapped a guy, and it actually made them sober up and all this kind of stuff. Well, we're not going to have that situation, but the slapping of the main muscles, the chest, the quadriceps, the hamstrings, and the calves should be the second part of your warm-up routine. And then you want them to walk into the blocks, like crawl into the blocks. Then once they're in the blocks, all 4 of the appendages, both arms and both legs, should have a level of load in them. They should feel somewhat taut, okay, where they're feeling. They shouldn't feel super rigid, but all 4 of those appendages should be holding the load for when they get into the blocks. Breathing control, another nice little trick, okay? You can force your body to calm down through breathing. We've all seen yoga, the Zen stuff. But you can also get the body to hype itself up. You see weightlifters where they're like, they give those heavy breaths and everybody's like, oh, that's kind of weird, or maybe I'm not comfortable with that. But trust me that those types of breathing, you'll start to feel tingles in your body, you'll start to feel your nervous system, and what you're doing is you're tricking the body into a fight and flight situation. Then breathing comes into play again when you're in the block itself. When they say set, you breathe in and you hold. And then you wait for the gun. And then when the gun goes, you breathe out as hard as you can and you sprint out of the blocks. If you watch lifters, when they're doing a squat, they breathe in. And when they breathe out, right? Because it's tightening up the core and it's making you more rigid. These are simple little things that can make a world of difference. Again, in the 100-meter dash, we're looking for tenths. We're not looking for seconds, right? But all of this stuff, and then you give them a routine. You give them those 5 things to do. They can remember 5 things to do to get in the blocks. You don't want to go beyond that, because then they start getting confused. But 5 simple things. Get your little jump, your little hype up thing to get your nervous system fired up. Make sure you have a slap routine of the muscles. Walk into the blocks. Remember your breathing. It's real simple. Okay? This is a great picture. This is Jared Ingram. He ran for McClure High School. He ran for Iowa State for a while. He has amazing block clearance. So what we're going to look at is that first step, what we like to call 0 step, which is getting out of the blocks. And we like to see the big arm split. And we also notice that he's straight from the head shoulders, hips, and ankle are all in what? Alignment. Okay? And that's what we want to see. All right. So some cues I use. I talk about pushing. Push, 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 push. We want them to push out of the blocks. But we also don't want them to rush. Like I said, it takes a really disciplined sprinter not to feel like, oh, I gotta get up. I gotta get up and run because they're getting away from me. They're not that far away from you. Stay in your drive phase. Drive, 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 drive. Build up more momentum. Because we want you to get to the highest speed you're capable of. They've already blown out their whole momentum within the first 30 to 40 meters. They won't be in front of you for long, all things being equal. So we want you to push, 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 push out of the blocks. Now, some things you don't want to do with this, you don't want them to force them to stay in some extreme body angle that they cannot hold. So how do we improve that? How do we force them into that nice extreme body angles that we see here? This is Morgan Griffin from St. Charles West. I trained her in the off seasons her junior and senior year. She was school record holder in the hurdles, the discus, the pole vault, and she was second fastest in her school history in the 100. And she happened to also be in my district. And so they scored a whole bunch of points and got a qualifier out that I was helping, But that's what we do as track coaches. We help each other out. It's so awesome. It's very different than other sports. But even her angles might not be as extreme, but she can still do that. So that's her ideal angle for her strength levels at that time. So what do we got to do? We got to do weight room work, got to have good strength program, things like that. What you don't want to do, though, is be the guy who holds a broomstick out and go under the broomstick. Because what they're going to do is they're going to come out of the blocks like this, and they're going to go like this. Okay? Because they're faking it. You also don't want them to fake it. If their butt's out and they're going like this, that's not a drive phase. Okay? A drive phase requires that all your hips, your ankles, your knees, and everything is going to be in alignment. You want to see that broomstick. If you drill between the top of their head and drove it all the way through their spine and down to their ankles, you want to see that stay in alignment. From block, sitting in hip stall in the blocks, and coming out, you sweep the floor slowly as you run out of blocks. Now, a thing I like to do early in the season to make block starts fun is we do a block start tournament. So right now here at Owensville, we got this, wrestling tournament. There's websites you can go to where they'll set up the little tournament bracket for you. You give them how many competitors you want. Do you want a constellation bracket? Do you not? And it will set the whole bracket up for you. Your job, all you got to do is just go in there and put in the names. It's really awesome. The kids love it. And I give away a thing called an interval card. You won't believe how hard these kids will, or how seriously these kids will take the March Madness block start tournament just to get this interval card. Now, the interval card is a ticket that at any time, at any point in the year, we get to a part of the season. They're like, I really just don't want to do that 450 today, Coach Banta. Boom! And they can put down the interval card and they get out. It's like winning the lottery. I'm still here because I didn't win last week. But it's really cool. And there's a lot of ways that you can motivate them with something like that. Now, the rule of the interval card that I usually do, you can only use one in a session. You cannot use it if you come late to practice, leave early to practice, or skip practice. And it can't be used on the longest interval of practice. But the interval card is a good motivator. And the kids love this, and we do this before spring break, and it's a way to kind of have fun and give them something competitive to do before maybe you get to that 14 practices that you need to be legal for Michigan to compete. And it's awesome. And they have a lot of fun, and I usually give away one to the winner and then one who wins the constellation bracket, and then I have the constellation winner and the overall winner race each other at the end, and the kids are hooping and hollering, and they're all screaming, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. And it's a good way to teach this. Okay, so drills that we can do to improve the zero step in the drive phase without blocks. So I'm going to go through a few of these. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Go. All right, try again. I'm going to step back a little far as you get all in. Set. Go.
Okay, and so what we're working on there is getting those big, aggressive arms, because sometimes kids don't know what that even feels like or looks like. They'll come out of the blocks and they'll give you like that. It's like, no. We want big, huge arms. And what's cool about this is everyone can do it all at the same time. You can line them up right in the infield, as long as you don't have lacrosse or baseball using the infield or whatever we have all the time. We got like 1,000 people in there dodging baseballs and crossballs and stadiums. But you can line them all up on the goal line, and you can just watch them all do it. And you can even stand there and kneel, and you can see, well, who's getting up too high and not getting out, who's getting their arms big enough, and then you can go and you can start separating them to the people who kind of need more practice at that particular drill. And this can be something that you practice if you're thematically doing things. So like if your theme of the day is acceleration, you should spend a lot of time doing these drills before maybe you get into the full acceleration workout. Okay? And again, acceleration can be part of your training. Even if you're doing longer intervals, there are things you can do to teach acceleration that you don't need blocks for. So for example, if you're doing, let's say, repeat 150s, have your kids get into that pro combine 3-point stance before they do any intervals. Just keep putting them in that and bunch them up. Bunch their feet up. So when they get in the blocks, they actually feel more comfortable than they do in the 3-point, and it'll feel like a relief when they're accelerating out of that. And you do that all the time. And then the kids will, that means you might only be able to run 10 kids at one time. But then, 5 seconds later, you can go, all right, here we go, 3, 2, 1. The kids get in their 3-point stance, the combine stance, and then you go again. And so you can teach these things all the time without having to have 25 blocks and a bunch of lanes and all this kind of stuff. All right, next. Now this is a real simple drill. We've probably all seen this before. Standing long jump, weighted vest, and we just want the guy to explode out.
Everybody's coming forward, everything.
And this is a young man from Parkway North that was a state qualifier in the triple, who also trained with us. I mean, it's simple, right? And then you have another guy, you have another person walk up and do it, another person walk up and do it, another person, they just walk right out of the back. And so you can go from the goal line to the sand pit and keep moving around the drills. It's really not hard to do. It doesn't take a lot of time to set up. And as high school coaches, we have an hour and a half, 2 hours. If you don't have lights at your facility, right, we can't stay late. So these are things we can do that are quick and we can do in large numbers that are pretty easy. This is, I stole this one. I don't know if you guys have seen those championship production videos of Lateef Thomas, if you've heard of him. All right, this is an awesome drill. Some of your hurdle coaches might not like it too much because they're stealing your hurdles and stuff like that, but it's a lot of fun and the kids enjoy it.
Yeah.
I get excited when they do it right. But, again, we're pushing down the track.
Yeah.
And you can
There you go.
She's staying low, and that's a way to force them to stay low, because you give them some support. The hurdle's not that heavy unless you've got those weighted hurdles. And even if you have that, you can adjust those and make them a little easier to manage. And then, of course, if you've got taller athletes, you're going to have to move the hurdle up a little bit, because you don't want them to force them into an angle that they can't do, okay, coming out of the blocks. And again, you don't need blocks. You can hurdle, and then you can have a kid who's 30 yards, 40 yards down the track. All the kid has to do is pick up the hurdle, turn it around, and drive it down the lane the opposite way. So it's easy to do large numbers. You have 20 kids on this side, 20 kids on this side, they're pushing the hurdle to each other. Real simple. Okay? But it's a lot of fun, and it teaches a good progression of acceleration in the proper body angles. And then the last one, we've all seen sled pulls. But before we talk about sled pulls, it's really important to know that when you're doing sled pulls, first of all, you want them to still stay in good acceleration mechanics. Okay, you want them to push, push, push. You don't need the sled to be heavier than 10% of their body weight, which girls kind of gets a little uncomfortable to talk about. We can guesstimate it. Girls can kind of figure that out, or whatever. They can tell each other, that's okay. And the coach can just come over and then hand the weights. All right, so one of the things we do at Parkway Central is we have a rack, one of those single, Christmas tree racks, where we put all the weights on, and the kids just come out and grab their weights, slap it on the sleds, and we go. And if you're not comfortable doing it on the track, that we're doing it in this video, you can always do it, on the football field too, as long as your football coach is okay with it, or if you have turf field, it's never a problem. You can do it all day long. And again, on this situation, we have a person on one side of the turf or the track driving the sled, pulling the sled, and then we have another group of athletes on the opposite side waiting. So you're reducing the amount of time that it takes while the athlete's recovering for the next set. And they pull it down the opposite way, and then they're waiting for 2-3 minutes or whatever, then the sled comes back and they go again, and that fits actually the recovery that they need in terms of their time to do a sled pull.
All right, whenever he's ready, Coach.
And again, 3-point stance, no need for lines. And you keep doing that type of start so all the kids know what you've got to do, and you keep it real consistent.
All right, whenever he's ready, Coach.
Show it to you one more time. And we're not yelling at him to stay down longer. I mean, he's naturally progressing up. You know, we don't want him to fake it and pull his weight and get his posture out of alignment. We want him to have nice posture and stay in the positions he needs to stay in. Okay. Now, the transition phase. A lot of coaches don't talk about this. But let's talk about after they drive, when they start to rise up, what are some things they need to do? You know, that's the, I'd say there's 4 parts of the race. You've got your drive phase acceleration, your transition, your maximum velocity, and your maintenance phase. A lot of coaches don't talk about the transition, but this is part of practice too. What I like to do with my training, when I'm training the 100-meter dashes, you start with acceleration, then you do transition, then you do maximum velocity, and then you do speed endurance. If you were going to do all 4 things in practice, you don't have to do that. But if you're going to do all of those things in practice, that's the order of operations you want to do. You obviously can divide it up however you want. So what's this? Not all at once. How many of your athletes do you see, they get to a point, they've got great, driving mechanics, right? And then all of a sudden, they just say, I guess I'm done driving. I'll come up now. And then they just pop right up. We don't want them to do that. Tell them, push, push, push. Don't rush. Not all at once. Allow your upright running to come in a more blended style. Blend the phases. Okay? Because if they're still able to hold a nice angle and keep their back flat, their chest up, and everything's good, why, if they're still able to hold this position, would they all of a sudden just go like that? And a lot of kids do that. Even really good kids who are really talented, they don't even know. They're just like, ooh, I've pushed for this long. I got to come up now. Now, what they found is that they did this with a professional sprinter. His name is Jimmy Vicu. He's a French guy. He's one of the fastest men in the world. We heard earlier a talk about 7 steps to the first hurdle that revolutionized pro hurdling. But also 7 steps is a nice target for your athletes to have when they're doing acceleration and transition work. So what you want them to do is be able to cover farther and farther and farther down the track on their 7th step. So besides looking at times, get a miniature cone, and when they're in the block, they set their miniature cone up to whatever distance is the farthest that they've ever gone for 7 steps. And so they have a visual target in front of them, and it's short, so they can kind of see it because it's low and it's up the track. And then they know that's kind of where the best drive I've ever had has been. And the goal is we want you to stay down longer. We want those 7 steps to cover more ground, and that's part of your goal. Yep. Go ahead, Coach.
Both feet on 7 steps?
It's the 7th contact, wherever it's at. And at that point, they're still going to be driving, but we want to, because a lot of times they'll take 4 steps, they'll come up, 5 steps and come up. So if you get to 7 steps and they're still driving for a high schooler, it's great. And then you also, of course, want to cross-reference that with times. You want them to get there at a reasonable time, but that 7th step is really good. Because remember, the first person to the 10, the 20 in a high school track isn't necessarily the person who's going to win the race. In pro racing it is, okay, typically. You look at some of the fastest guys in the world. But we want to use that as a measuring stick for them, and it's cheap. You could do a tennis ball, you could do tape, and they can put their name on it, and that becomes something else for them to concentrate on. And what it does is, where are they looking while they're doing it? Down at the ground, right? So it forces them a little bit more to stay in that acceleration position. They're not so worried about, oh, I gotta get to that spot, I gotta get there. No. We want them to stay down, not all at once. So as you move up, your eyes progressively move up down the track too. At first, when you're driving out of the blocks, it's like 2 meters in front of you, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, then it's like 40 yards away. You want your eyes to progressively move up too. Don't all of a sudden rise up, because your head's going to go where your eyes are going to go. If your head goes, your shoulders are going to come up. And now the transition and the drive phase is over. It's done. So that's one of the things we talked about, I mentioned earlier. We want the athletes to feel like they're slingshot. Another thing that's really confusing is their ankles. At different parts of the race, you want the ankles to do different things. When they're in acceleration, you want the ankles to stay low, you want them to pound, you want them to be piston-y off the ground, like pistons in an engine. But then as they begin to transition, those ankles are going to come up higher and start to fold underneath the butt. Okay? But at the beginning, you don't really want that. You want the pow, 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 punch in the ground. You know? We want them hitting the ground so hard that Isaac Newton gets a headache. Okay? It needs to be aggression, it needs to be anger. But then as they start to open up, again, we want to blend that. It shouldn't happen all at one time. And you can do that in your drills. You know, if you're doing a high knee, start them off in a 3-point acceleration, have them accelerate, and then have them go from a quick ankle to a high knee to a butt kick. You know, you can blend that over 20 or 30 yards as drills that you can do to teach them. Race modeling, again, you can set up cones besides the 7-step. It's like, all right, we want you to drive to 20 meters, 25 meters, okay? From 25 meters to 35 meters, we want that to be your transition. That might not naturally be what they do, but you're giving them little landmarks throughout the race, okay? Now they've transitioned, so from, you know, 25 to 35, they've transitioned. Now it's going to be maximum velocity, which is what we'll talk about here momentarily. Well, then we want them to blend that out, and we want them to do certain things from there. You get to the last 20 meters, then it's about concentrating, keeping your mechanics, and organizing that, and that can be another landmark that you can put out there after maximum velocity, so from like 60, 70, or 80, depending on how good your athlete is. Okay? Now, one of the things I talk about, this is not such a problem with professional athletes, but you still sometimes see it. How many of us have seen an athlete drive out of the blocks, come up, and go, oh no, I got up, and then put their head down again? Have we seen that? I'm sure we've all seen that. A lot of times with high school people. Guess what? Tyson Gay does that. Okay? He still does it. So it's one of the things you got to tell your athletes, once you're up, you're up. Don't go back down. Because now you're making the situation what? Worse. So you didn't even get to use the momentum you built up, you cut the momentum off. So don't do that. We'll work on that for the next round. Hopefully you qualify through. You know, or work on it next week if we have another meet. You know, but once you're up, you're up. Don't go back down. Don't do that. Okay? Once you're up, you're up. Because you're going to cut off all the momentum, any of the slingshot you have left. And one of the things I always tell the kids is, we want to pull that slingshot way back. And so when we release it, we're going to fly by everybody. I always tell the kids too, when we do this kind of stuff, you want to get the woo factor. And you guys know what I'm talking about, right? When you get to a race and the kid starts blowing by everybody, they go, woo! At the big track meets. That's what we want. So get the woo factor. Go after that. Okay? Be the guy who's coming on strong at the end versus being the guy who everybody's like, oh, it really sucks for that guy. He got leaned out. All right, so drills for the transition phase. Some of these drills are controversial. I got people who tell me all the time, oh, you shouldn't do that. I've done this for 15 years. I haven't had any injuries doing this stuff. As long as you teach this stuff correctly, you make sure that the athletes are safe, the conditions on the track are good. Some of these drills you can do and you don't need to worry about somebody getting hurt. Okay, the first one's pretty simple. We've probably all seen this. I'll repeat it a couple times for you. It's a follow start. And so you want the athlete to lean out as far as they possibly can before they take a step. Later, another progression that you can do with this is actually the coach would come in here and hold the hips, and then they could lean even farther, and then you go 3, 2, 1, release, behind them, release, and then they have to catch themselves and pop, and keep pushing. And again, we're not working on drive phase anymore, we're working on the transition, so it's the middle part, getting better at that part of the race. And again, when they do all this stuff, this is tiring, and this becomes a workout. You know, if you build this in. Now, you're not going to do this all the time. We're going to look. You've got different themes and things you're going to do for different practices. But this would be a day that's themed acceleration.
Whenever you're ready. Good.
Okay? We want them to roll over. We want them to keep their feet together, roll over, and push up. Okay, so that's one. All right. Bench drops. This is the one that's a little more controversial.
Oh.
And you'll see why here momentarily. Okay? Now, if you have more than one athlete, or you don't have an athlete that's really good at this, you would want to have an athlete sitting on this side of the bench to hold the bench in place. You'd have an athlete sitting over here. Okay? The foot's going to drop. One foot's going to be maintaining contact on the bench. The other foot's going to free fall with the athlete, maintaining good angles. And this is plyometric, too. Turn the sound up. It's kind of distracting. So you lean out, foot out, and then rise up. And again, this isn't like acceleration out of the blocks, this is transition. Bullet belt. The bullet belt is one of those things that's like some coaches really love it. For me, I love it for this reason entirely. So what you do is you have the athlete get in that transition phase position. There's a rip cord. You're holding resistance against them. They pull away from you. You chase them. And as they begin to speed up, you release, and it actually practices them feeling and using and being comfortable with that slingshot action, where all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I got all this momentum, and being able to control it. Okay? And it builds specific strength in that phase of driving down the track. And then rip, and then he takes off. And those are very cheap, and you can get a bunch of them, and again, you can do these like as a circuit where you have a bunch of different things going on with a bunch of different athletes at one time. I will do the bench drop, the standing long jumps, the pulls with the sled. They'll all be happening at the same time. And so you have your captains and you and maybe another coach doing the different stations. And you can do that too if you feel like you don't have enough time. Now I like I said earlier, I like to do progressions, but not all of us have a bunch of coaches. If you're one coach, you got to get all this stuff done. That's a way of getting it all done in a timely fashion. All right. And then last one, this one's simple. Again, a lot of people can do this if you've got a medicine ball. So you stand them, they lean over, they got the medicine ball here, and it's got to be heavy. They explode the medicine ball through, and then they take off from that transition angles. Okay? Now, what's cool about this is something you can do with your athletes at a track meet before they run the 100 or the 200 or the 100 hurdles or whatever to take advantage of that PAP, that post-activation protonation. Okay? You can do this. Now, of course, you know, sometimes these places get pretty crowded, but, you know, sometimes they just let athletes down there, and if that's the case, this is not a problem to do. But in practice, you can have 10, 15, 20 kids doing this at one time if you have enough med beds. And then they take off. And she's strong, and she's athletic, but a lot of kids can do this thing. And then go. I mean, she's moving before the ball is completely out of her hands. Okay, another good transition drill. And my YouTube page is phantasmo.1978. All these drills and many, many more are on there. I can give you the link to that if you want later. Take a look at it. Oops, sorry. So, maximum velocity, we want to have good posture, okay? We want to be straight up and down. We want good arm angles, okay? We want decent front side mechanics. We want good heel recovery and dorsiflexion. Styles should be limited. Good sprinters all look the same. The best sprinters in the world. The difference between the pros and regular people is front side mechanics. The better front side mechanics you have, the longer your what becomes? Your stride becomes. Remember we talked about at the very beginning of the conversation, you want that stride length to get really long? These are things that you can practice in training. Okay? And so we want to see frontside mechanics is you want to exaggerate it all the time. Okay? So you want that knee way up. One of the things I always say is get your knee, get your ankle away from your knee. A lot of kids will constantly do this because they feel like this is where they should be. And so we do drills, I say get your knee away from your ankle. Okay? Dorsiflexion. Dorsiflexion is where we have that shin angle. You're feeling tension in the front of your shin. So your foot is pointing up towards your shin. If kids have a hard time doing that, tell them take your big toe and pull it up. Pull your big toe up. It'll help them dorsiflex. Studies have found that you want them to not just dorsiflex when they get here, they do their drills. You want them to dorsiflex right when they get off the ground. Dorsiflex as early as you can. And you tell the kids, right when you get off the ground, dorsiflex, dorsiflex, dorsiflex. Because they found the athletes that do that sooner are not only better stride length, have better return off the ground, which then means better stride frequency. So we want that foot to dorsiflex immediately. And when it dorsiflex, it creates that tension, which allows the foot to travel straight up to the butt, over the knee, and then down. Okay? So we want to make sure that happens. And that allows heel recovery to come in the proper place. So the best athletes in the world, heel recovery, their heel is coming up above their knee, and actually as they're in contact over the center of mass, if they're a really, really good sprinter, their knee's not back here when they're in contact with the ground, it's here, or here, or here. And that's, you know, the better front side mechanics you have, usually the faster you're going to be, better stride length you're going to be, dorsiflex, better turnover you're going to have, you know, faster stride, all that good stuff. So, how do we do this? Well, stride length, plyometrics, plyometrics, plyometrics. You want to do that stuff as much as you can without hurting your kids. A lot of you guys went and saw Boo, so you want to have nice progressions. Start with the in place, right? Then you want to start hopping over barriers. Then you want to do bounding endurance where you're going over a distance. Then you want to add complex things, add a medicine ball, add a weight vest to the plyometrics. Then you can start doing depth jumps. So now you've got the medicine ball or the weight vest, and now you're stepping off over an elevated surface and exploding up. And so those are the nice progressions you want to see. Because the closest thing to running all out is plyometric training besides running all out. And so that's a way to increase stride length, which again is the easiest thing to do to make our athletes fast. Cued runs, so you want to cue them. So what I'll do is I'll have different things. I'll have a cone, and I'll say high knees, and they'll run to that cone. Then I'll say a run, and they have to do an a run, which is an exaggerated, you know, high knee run, but it's more open. Then I'll say float. So then they kind of dial it back a little bit, and then I'll say all out. And so they'll have 4 different jobs at these different cones. And what was mentioned earlier in the hurdle conversation was rhythm lock, which some coaches also call dynamic stereotype. So the athlete's nervous system gets used to firing in a certain pattern. Well, the only way we could break that nervous system pattern to make it faster is by forcing the body to deal with all this different kind of stuff, and it's got to think again. And then the nervous system gets stronger and better because now it's dealing with an increased stimulus that it hasn't seen before, forcing it to become faster. So one of the simplest ones you want to do, A run float, A run float, A run float. And you can do that 15 meters a pop. Now, before they do that, you're going to want to have a 20-meter acceleration so they can get up to speed. So you always want to have acceleration in there where you can. And again, we go back into the 3-point accelerate up, 20 meters, okay, A run, 15 more meters, float, 15 meters, A run, and on and on and on. And that'll force the body to deal with this, which will allow the body to twitch faster because we're only spending so much time on the ground now because we're at maximum speed. Another thing you can do is overspeed work. This is not as safe as this, and this isn't always as effective as this because not all of us have a good hill to do. If you're going to do this, the sweet spot of downhill running is 5% grade. Anything more than that, it's going to slow the athlete down. So if it's less than 5%, you're going to get something out of it, and it will help you. But anything more than that is diminishing returns. It's too much of a load on the body. So 5% or less downhill runs, another wonderful thing you can do for maximum velocity. All right, so this is a very abbreviated version of this, and my camera, I did a terrible job filming this, so please forgive me. But this is an example of 3 different athletes of different caliber. And so they're accelerating, they get to the cone, and now they're cued to A-run. And you can actually see where you see the high knee action, right, of the young man. You can see she's getting off the ground, not as good. Okay, and I'll let you guys see it at full speed. So watch again. So accelerate out, A-run. Okay, and again, different level of talents. That guy's a college soccer player. You know, Morgan Griffith was a state champion in the pole vault, and the other young lady was a sectional qualifier in the triple jump. Now, what's kind of neat about that is all 3 of them are at different levels, right? And so we can see how much better they are by the frontside mechanics right there. So, again, better stride length, better frontside mechanics, faster the kids are. Okay? And it's really easy to see. And what's really kind of neat is they can all kind of accelerate around the same. Okay? But once it gets to A-run time, again, it looks like they're slingshot. Especially, look at the difference between these 2. Pay attention to that, the girls. It's almost like she just leaves it. Okay? And so, again, and it might not be as exaggerated as you want to be, but just them thinking about it forces their body to do something it doesn't naturally do. And you guys understand what that A-run is, right? It's like a high knee sprint. Okay, so now I don't even call it A-run with my kids because sometimes they'll just jog it and then like jog with this ugly high knee thing. So now I call it an A-run sprint so that they know this is a sprint. You have to sprint. Okay, so again, language is always funny. Kids hear different things. So you want to be careful how you cue them, what you talk about. All right, mini hurdle run or rotary runs. So she's going to run all out over the hurdles. Again, this is to increase stride length and to work on that heel recovery. Okay, really easy to do. She can go much bigger with the hurdles, so as they get faster, you want to spread those hurdles out. Again, we saw this earlier, but we want that nice heel recovery. Okay, and as they get better, we want them to spread the hurdles out and accelerate it. And again, you've got an acceleration zone there. And again, if you don't have money to buy the mini hurdles, you can make them out of PVC pipe. They're super cheap. You know, cut a piece of PVC pipe by a foot, 6 or 8 inches, another 6 or 8 inches, get the little crossbar pieces, put them together. It's super cheap. You can make a ton of them. So something that is cost effective. All right, single leg hops. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get the athlete used to being in that single leg position with the knee coming in front and the foot coming off the ground. Because at max velocity, that's what's happening. Now that doesn't look all that intense, but we're talking about introducing things to these young people for the first time ever. Now, if they get really good, you can add mini hurdles, you can add cones, you can do all that kind of stuff and make it more explosive. Okay? Another thing I like to do off of that is I'll have them do that, and then I'll have them sprint off the back. So they'll do a single leg hop, you know, they'll hop that single leg. And then when they get to that 10 or 20 meters, then they sprint out off the back end of that, which is kind of a fun way to add in a little extra, add a little acceleration or transition phase. It's really nice. I'm working as fast as I can here, guys. I don't want to run behind. All right, so this is an article. You guys can look this up. You can email me. I'll give this to you. But this breaks down that thing I was talking about earlier with how you can break down a different type of race model. And you can do build, float, hit, float. And you can kind of break it up. And I give like an example of how to do the whole workout. And then I talk about how to use the language or what you're cueing to give them. So I'll have this PowerPoint, and you guys can go to all those links and read that stuff when you want to, or when you're late night at home and can't go to sleep, we put you to sleep. Okay, speed reserve, speed endurance, we talked about that. We want to build repeatable things that we can do. We want to build tolerance of the waste products that we're building up. And then we also want to pay attention to special considerations of what we're doing with our athlete when we build this training. Are they hamstring or quadricep-centric sprinters? Hamstring-centric sprinters, they'll benefit from the speed endurance and the maximum velocity more. A quadricep-centric sprinter, they're powering the entire time they run down the track. And if they're like an athlete that's played sports since they were 6 years old and they're a quadricep-centric sprinter, if you're going to try to change them, that might not be so good. So we want to evaluate that before we start moving to some speed endurance stuff. because they might not benefit as much from the speed endurance stuff as a hamstring-centric sprinter who's more bouncy and elastic. So a test I like to do for that is when we do a bounding exercise and you watch, do they do it single arm or double arm? If they bound with a single arm, they're more likely a hamstring-centric athlete who can rely on the elastic properties of their body. If they double arm it, they're more of a quadricep-centric sprinter. This is a nice little test. You can line them up and say, hey, I want you to bound for like 20 meters. We're going to do a little run-in. Again, we're always running in. And then we're going to have you go for 20 meters or 20 yards, and we'll see what you do. Don't even tell them what to do. Don't demonstrate. Just have them do it. Because again, this is for evaluation. Sure enough, he's a what? Hamstring-centered guy. And even though he's skinny, he's not that big. You look for these big buff guys. It's not always the case. He's the quadriceps-centered guy. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So something to think about. Okay. These are examples of different workouts you can do for speed endurance. Do you have a short to long sprint? Do you have a long to short? This is the presentation I did last month. So if you kind of want to know more about that, that's explained here. Different workouts you can do. You have different expectations. So this is speed endurance. So what you're trying to do here is get faster over a longer and longer and longer distance, starting off short and extending it out. Tempo work. This is becoming better at the aerobic aspect of sprinting, which we don't talk about a lot, but being able to recover quicker, and then you're building in strength in between. When in each of these 200s, you're doing this. So it's like a circuit with sprint training. So you run a 200 all out, when they get on the ground, they do all that stuff. Okay? Lactate stacking or buffering workout. You're going to run 150, very, very short recovery, 45 seconds, and then you have them run 4 40s pretty much as hard as they can with only 40 seconds resting. You want them to feel tired, you want them to build up that waste product, get their body better at buffering that. This is a workout they can do. Okay? So these are 3 different types of workouts. And again, I've got my flash drive here. If you've got a laptop, we can load it up. No problem sharing. You can email me and I can send this to you. These are great speed endurance or special endurance workouts. How do you plan your week? If you're doing 100, okay, 100-centric sprinter, short sprinter, which we talked about short to long, long to short. 100 to 200 person. Monday, acceleration, max velocity. Tuesday, tempo work. Longer intervals on the tempo work. Short recovery. Building the body's ability to buffer the waste products, to deal with fatigue, improving their ability to recover in meets and in practice. Wednesday, active recovery, which could be herd mobility, visualization, and goal setting for the upcoming meets of the week. You want to talk to them, evaluate, give them a couple days from the last weekend's meet to kind of figure out what they did wrong, what they did right. That's the day you have your conversations. That's what I like to call our mental day to recover, mental day to reflect. Thursday, race modeling or special endurance, which goes to those longer, so 60, 80, 90, 100, 120, 150 workout that I showed you would be done on a Thursday. Then Friday, you could come back with another tempo day, but instead of doing 200s, now you could do 100s on the minute. You could do 80s with super short recovery. You could do 150s instead of 200s, whatever you want to do. Then on Saturday, you want to mimic what would be, which is speed endurance, which would be racing. Okay? So you're going to run a couple intervals of whatever their specialty race would be. And if it's a 100-meter sprinter, you're probably going to run, 100s, 150s, 80s, whatever. I don't like running the actual race distance because it messes with the kids' minds. They can never run as fast in practice, even with spikes on in beautiful weather and a tailwind. They'll never run as fast as they run. We do a time trial every year, 200 meters. Kids will come out. The first time they run a 200 in competition, it's a second and a half faster. And it might just be 5 days later. They didn't get that much better all of a sudden. They just got adrenaline. And it's competition. You put on the jersey, you're representing your school, you're representing something bigger than yourself. It matters to the kids. They'll perform that. And for me, you guys can look at Parkway Central. We do not have a hotbed of talent. We work really hard to get these kids better. But the thing is that you want to develop a group of kids. You want to have a large number of kids. So one of the things I always say is, if you're a great school, are you competitive at a lot of relays every year? And if you are, that means you're creating a number of above average athletes and making them better. And then when you get a thoroughbred, then you can really destroy people. But you're not going to have that burner, as we talked about, all the time. That person, they are special for a reason. But if you still want to be competitive in those events, you're smart about training, then you can get 4 or 5 kids. Well, now you're going to win a bunch of medals because you have a group of kids that can do it. And that's kind of my goal as a coach at Parkway Central, is I always want to be competitive in the relays. I want to create a group of above average sprinters. So no matter what, I've got kids scoring points, any invitational, qualifying out of district every year. And you got to be good at the chess match to know that too. I had one of the slowest girls I ever had qualify out of the district last year in the 100. She just kept getting better, kept getting better, kept getting better. When I first got her, she could run 16 seconds in the 100. By the time she was out of here, she went 13. So if you guys have any questions of me or anything like that, feel free to contact me. This is my email, this is my Twitter, and then this is my Facebook account. And again, if you guys want me to share that stuff with you guys and send you guys that on my flash drive, I'm more than welcome to do that. I love to share. That's what track coaches are supposed to do. Okay, so thank you guys. I appreciate it very much.